Hi students, welcome to another Mr. Ness screencast. Today's aim is the 13 colonies, and here are your objectives. Please pause the video to look these questions over, and before you continue, make sure that you have your vocab sheet and something to write with in front of you. Get ready to copy some vocab terms and take some notes. So in the last video, you saw how several European countries colonized the New World starting in the 1500s. Today we're going to focus on just one of those countries, England. England had a huge empire with colonies all over the world, but in this unit we're going to focus on a specific group of British colonies, the ones that England controlled in North America. And we call these colonies the 13 colonies because there were 13 of them in one area, which was the east coast of North America. And the reason that we're focusing on this group of colonies is because those 13 colonies would eventually become the United States, the country that we live in. In this map, the 13 colonies are shaded in red, and you can see that they're located up and down the east coast of North America, directly bordering the Atlantic Ocean across from England. Now let's look at why England wanted these colonies. The main goal of the British colonists was to make money off of natural resources, which are products that come straight from the earth. Natural resources could be used for sustenance, or they could be sold to obtain wealth. The most important natural resource in the New World was land, because it could be used to grow different crops that could then be sold for money. For Europeans at this time, land was the key to wealth and status, and the important people in society were the ones that owned a lot of land. Other important natural resources besides land and crops included fish, animal furs, and wood from trees. All of these things could be sold to make money. So for Europeans, the number one goal of imperialism in the New World was to increase their wealth and status by acquiring land and other natural resources. However, there was a small number of colonists who left England and went to the 13 colonies seeking religious freedom. These colonists were a minority, but they're important because they had a significant influence on a couple of the colonies, especially Massachusetts. Now let's look at the 13 colonies more closely. We grouped them into three geographic regions: the New England colonies, the Middle colonies, and the Southern colonies. And we grouped them this way because the colonies in each of those regions shared specific characteristics. For the rest of this video, I want you to focus on the geographic and economic characteristics that the colonies in each region shared. When I say geographic characteristics, I mean things related to the land and the climate or weather. And when I say economic characteristics, I mean things related to making money. In other words, what types of work were most common. Geography and economics are related to each other because geography affected economics. Each region's land and weather impacted which natural resources were available there. And since colonists were mainly making money off of natural resources, the colonists in each region made money in different ways. These differences are important because they caused each colony to develop differently in ways that would have huge impacts on the course of US history. Even today, these different parts of the United States are different in many ways. Let's look at each of the three regions in more detail. The New England colonies, which are shown in pink on this map, include New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. As you can see, they're the farthest north, and we call this entire northern region New England. In terms of geography, the New England colonies are cold. Winters are long, which means there's not much time to grow crops. We call that a short growing season. Also, the soil is very rocky. It's full of rocks, and that's bad for growing crops. So we can say that it was pretty hard to grow crops in New England. On the other hand, there were a lot of forests, lots of fast-moving rivers, and excellent ports for ships to sail in and out of that colonists took advantage of. Economically, the colonists in New England did have farms, but because it was hard to grow crops, their farms tended to be small. Instead, they also earned money by using wood to build ships. They did a lot of fishing and whaling in the Atlantic Ocean, and there was some manufacturing. That means turning natural resources into finished goods in factories. And finally, there were a lot of merchants who shipped natural resources and finished goods across the ocean to England. Pause for a second and take a look at this image of colonial Massachusetts. Which of the geographic characteristics can you see in the image? Which of the economic characteristics can you see? Now let's look at the middle colonies, which are shown in tan on this map. And the middle colonies include New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. The middle colonies weren't as cold as New England. They had a moderate climate. Moderate means not too hot and not too cold. Think about the weather in New York. That's what I mean when I say moderate. And the soil in this region was pretty good for growing crops. As a result, the middle colonies became the main center for growing wheat, which is used to make bread. Sometimes people called the middle colonies the breadbasket of colonial America because so much wheat was grown there. There was also some manufacturing in cities like New York and Philadelphia. Here's a picture of colonial Pennsylvania. What do you see here that reflects the region's geographic features, and what do you see that reflects the economic features? All right, last group, the southern colonies. They included Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. If you've ever been to the South, you probably know that it's hot and humid for a lot of the year. Unlike New England, the southern colonies had a long growing season. It was so warm that farmers could grow crops pretty much all year round. Also, unlike New England, the southern colonies had excellent soil, so this was a great place for growing crops. Not surprisingly, the main economic activity in the South was growing crops, and in particular, special crops called cash crops that could be sold for a lot of money. Cash crops were often grown on large commercial farms called plantations, and the plantations were usually worked by slaves who were taken from West Africa. You'll learn more about cash crops, plantations, and slavery in the next lesson. All right, before we finish, take a look at this image of colonial Virginia. And again, ask yourself, what do you see in the picture that reflects the geographic characteristics of the southern colonies? And what do you see that reflects the economic characteristics? Now it's time to review the objectives. If you don't know the answer to any, or if you aren't sure, just rewind the video and review. I will see you in class. Bye, students.